humble brag right here. Okay. We have this, back then we called it the foreign weapons rattle battle. So, but it wasn't just foreign weapons. So it was this final test of, so you had down men, you had to go to these different stations, shoot these weapon systems, they tally up the points, your time, and all that other stuff, and drag people and shoot all these different weapon systems. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be a good test, because it's a difficult thing. You know, at the end of it, you're sucking wind and you're just like, holy crap, you know. And so I do it, but I take a different strategy to it. So I decided, hey, I'm not going to worry about speed. I'm going to worry about accuracy and making everything that I do matter. And I'm not going to push trying to do everything super fast. I'm just going to do everything deliberately. And so I get done with that thing. You know, I'm smoked at the end of it. And they called us we get done with that evolution, and we go to the training room and we get our debrief. And one of the LPO of the course comes walking in. He's got the scores. He's, you know, with the teams, everything's competition, right? And he comes in and he's pissed off. Well, he's not really pissed off, but he's acting like he's pissed off, right? And he's reading off the scores, and I'm dead center of the pack of the team. So I had beat out almost all of the new guys and some of the older guys.
I'm sure that didn't cause any shit talking.
From training cell? I mean, but it was the moment that I realized, okay, I can do the job. You know what I mean?
And this is only 3 months removed from the incident. That was
probably month 4. 3 and somewhere in there. Yeah. Yeah.
But this was this your personal test to see if you could come back to full duty?
It was both. So what I didn't know at the time is that SEAL Team 1 was looking hard, and they were talking to training cell about what was going on behind the scenes. I didn't know that was going on at the time. But for me, it was, hey, if I can't handle nylon, then I can't do the job.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. So let's make it easy on everybody. Tell me about you growing up. Where's hometown for you?
I grew up between a place called Cave Creek and New River in Arizona. Yeah.
Been to Cave Creek once.
Yeah.
There's a triathlon out there that I went and did one time. Small little town.
Yeah, yeah.
What was childhood life like for you?
It was good. We lived pretty rural, so my nearest friend lived like a half a mile away down a dirt road, you know, so yeah, it was we were out there, you know.
Big family, small family?
Small family. I have an older brother and my mom and dad.
For your interest, was it sports? Were you into school? You know, what kind of took up your time?
That's a good question. So I was a guy who liked baseball, wasn't good at it.
As were all of us.
I mean, I loved baseball. I lived and breathed it, played all year round. Arizona allowed that, you know, they had winter leagues and stuff like that, but I just was never good enough. You know, but my main focus, my dad, so I have kind of an interesting story. I'm half Okinawan. And my dad had started training a classical form of Okinawan karate, you know, way before I was born. And then he met my mom in, I don't know if it was Chicago or Michigan at a Buddhist church convention. And she comes from the Shiroma family in Okinawa, and it's a old name in karate in Okinawa, and they met, and so I ended up growing up doing martial arts, which I hated.
Because you were forced to do it?
I was forced to do it. It wasn't like, he was beating me to do it, but, it was something I had to do. It was kind of like chores for me, I didn't appreciate it until I got into junior high. That's when I started to enjoy it. But before then, and it was the way we trained was very old world. So it was pretty brutal, and it was demanding, and it was a lot of discipline. And I wasn't that type of person. I was pretty wild as a kid. So, my dad and I butted heads all the way up into high school. Him and I just didn't get along, but, I did what he said, and, I trained and all that. But, yeah, it was rough.
Your brother also?
My brother, yeah. My brother also.
Now, was your dad doing this as a profession? So were there other people training under your father at your house?
Yes, but the reason it's funny is because it's also the family system of karate that my mom belonged to. And she was a judo and jiu-jitsu player. So it just, the whole family was into that type of stuff. So, and it was just really kind of it was, looking back now, I look back on it, it was awesome. But as a kid, you don't know what you have, so I just, growing up, I wanted to play baseball. I didn't want to throw punches and kicks and fall and throw and roll and do all that stuff. I just didn't want to do that.
And what took your family specifically to that portion of Arizona?
So we were living in Van Nuys, and my dad and my mom were connected into that, the Japanese community, the Okinawan community in the LA area. But I think the reason we moved is California started, the busing program.
The inter school type busing?
Yeah. So I lived like right there next to my school, and they wanted to move. They wanted to bus me to like, downtown LA area.
So very, very logical thought process.
Right. Yeah. I lived right next to the school, and my dad just lost it at that point. He says, we're getting out of California. And so we moved to Arizona, and we went from kind of big city, if you can call Van Nuys big, or the Valley big city, I guess you can. And then we moved to
middle of nowhere,
the middle of nowhere, which was a total.
And what year was this?
Excuse me. Let's see, I was just going into 4th grade. So I like.
So you spent most of your growing up life then in Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming close to the end of high school, what were you thinking, or what was your plan for adulthood?
I wasn't sure. So, this is when I started really gravitating towards, the karate that I was training in the family system. Now it's a non-competitive system, and it really was about self-defense and all that. So it's a very classical, old way of thinking about martial arts. It wasn't about competition and all that other stuff. Even though we went after it, it wasn't, no trophies or anything like that. Very, very simple, very plain system. So we didn't have like a huge amount of students. There's only like a small little group of people. And so I started actually liking it in high school and started really enjoying it. And my dad was pushing me to, hey, think about start teaching and all this other stuff. But I never felt that I was there. I felt I was too young, and I just didn't have the wisdom to be, because I was still a dumb kid, and I knew that, So I started looking at my options. I wasn't a good student at all. My head was always somewhere else. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do in high school. And so I graduated high school and went into junior college. And at the same time, I said, okay, I've got two options. I got college, I got the military. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to go in the Marine Corps Reserves and go to school at the same time and figure out which one I like better. Or maybe, I do college and, do something with the military. I didn't know. My dad was a former Marine, and he was, he told me stay away from the military. Of course, what did I do? The exact opposite, right? The old saying of the older I get, the smarter my own man gets. It's kind of the thing. So I joined the Marine Corps Reserves, and I loved it, and I hated college. So I kind of put my feet in both worlds, just kind of dabbled in both. Like junior college is like the reserves, real college, and the reserves it's the reserves, right? So I saw that I enjoyed that side of it, and I did pretty good in the Marine Corps. And then I just decided, you know what? I'm not getting anything accomplished in college because I did like a semester and a half and realized this is ridiculous, And then I actually ended up joining the Navy after that.
What was your brother doing? What did he end up going to do?
He went in the Army.
Okay, so you both went the military route.
Yeah.
And what made you switch from the Marine Corps? Well, what year did you go into the Navy full time? And what was the reason for the switch from the Marine Corps to the Navy?
So while I was in the Marine Corps, I was debating on going active duty into the Marine Corps because my dad was a recon guy. And so that was the direction I wanted to go, because I heard so much about recon and all that other stuff. And then one of my dad's students was a prior Marine, and he started talking to me about SEALs that he had worked with on a ship, and it was just a unique organization that the Navy had. And I never really thought about it after that. And then the reserve unit I belonged to, we were combat engineers, and they were transferring from combat engineers to a bulk fuel MOS. And that really didn't appeal to me, but I had to go to school out in Virginia to get MOS change. And we're in the barracks, and there's this Navy dude who, the Marine Corps is very about their uniforms, all squared away and everything. There's this long-haired Navy dude in sloppily worn camis that kept walking through our barracks. He was staying in the same barracks, but we didn't know who the guy was and all this other stuff. But he was in a different dorm, and he was walking through using the head when we were there. And I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, that guy's in the military, because the Marine Corps has I was still kind of a boot, as they say. And this guy he looked like a civilian just wearing, so, I confronted him and talked to him, and he explained to me, what he was in the Navy. And he's, at the time he said he was a frogman. I didn't know what the hell that was.
What year is this?
This is like 89. Yeah, I think it was 89. So I asked him, hey, you're in the Navy, because back then we didn't wear any tapes on our uniforms. We just had pins. And so the Navy did the same thing. And so he started explaining. I'm like, what the hell's that? And I said, wow, that sounds a lot like recon. And he started explaining it to me. A friend of mine who was also in the reserve unit, both of us started talking to him, and he started talking about the SEAL teams. And it was interesting because this goes back to my martial arts. The whole reason I went into the military is because I was like, the training that we're doing, there's a lot of talk about a certain type of mindset, and you just can't. I felt you couldn't get it out of the dojo, no matter how much you spar and randori and do all that stuff. It just, yes, you learn aggression, you learn, a little bit of violence, and you're, it hurts and it's tough and it's rough, but there's something missing, right? And all these people are talking about being warriors and all this other stuff, right? And how tough they are. And I just didn't see it. I'm like, we're in a controlled environment. We're in a school, we're in a dojo, whatever you want to call it. And we're getting after it, but, and we're beating each other up pretty good. But,
well, and like you mentioned earlier, you weren't doing competitions per se in the sense. So everybody that was training together at a certain point, you are friends.
Right.
And so there is probably even subconsciously, you're never going to go 100%. As opposed to if you were going against a total stranger.
Well, even in competition, you can't go 100%, because I train. So I snuck out from my dad's teaching and I started training Muay Thai. I started training Kyokushinkai, combative style martial arts, jiu-jitsu and judo.
Was this after you got out of high school?
Yeah, it was after high school.
Because I was going to say where you were at in the Cave Creek area. Was all of this available to you?
Well, I'd go down to Phoenix. Everything,
okay.
Yeah, it's about 30 miles from outside of Phoenix.
Okay.
So I go down to the schools down in Phoenix, and I trained with these different schools and trained. I joined in high school. I joined another, what they call a traditional karate system at the high school. There was a club, and it was so watered down and like.
Like, come out to my house.
Yeah, come see what we're doing up here, because this isn't the same thing, even though it's called the same thing. But it was fun. It was a social club, and I had friends in that club, and it was okay. But then I started expanding out and training all these other martial arts. Some of it was by direction by my dad, because even though I was now accepting of it, him and I were still butting heads about everything. So he's, hey, go train with these. I trained Aikido. I trained, things that I ended up liking was Muay Thai and the Kyokushinkai. Very similar, even though they're from different regions. And that's what I gravitated to, and some aspects from Aikido I liked, but it just didn't seem, it had that same feeling as the club at the high school, right?
But ultimately it never drove you to the point of, hey, that's what I could do for the rest of my life. I could teach that.
Well, I did want to do that. Plus there's this obligation as far as the family, the family system, to pass it on. But I never ever felt like I was there. You know what I mean? So, the military had that aspect to it. Like, okay, you're talking about being a warrior, you're talking about being all these different things, but it's more than punching and kicking and throwing and grabbing and joint locking. There's more to it than that. There's the mental side of it that was missing. Because even if you're into competition, a competition martial art, right? You train at such a high level where your system now becomes a game of chess, right? Because now you're trying to outwit people that are equally trained and have the same mindset, and now you're trying to maneuver around the maneuver that's maneuvering around the maneuver, if that makes sense to you.
Yes.
Okay. Where I saw real confrontation is more chaotic than that. It's not even chess. It's not even checkers. It's even more simple than that, but it's more chaotic than that. You know what I mean? So I just did not feel that I could get what I was looking for by training specifically any kind of martial art. It's the same thing with competition shooting, right? Very controlled environments, lots of rules, set patterns. I'm not saying that this stuff is bad or any of this is bad. It's all good stuff. They're all building blocks, right? But when you look at competition shooting and stuff like that, you see the game, you see the chess game, and that's exactly what it is. It's a chess game.
Well, like you said, though, somebody could be very good at a competition shooting event.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be good in a gunfight.
Absolutely.
Against another combatant.
Absolutely. Just because you have a sub-second quick draw doesn't mean that that's going to do you any good on the street. In fact, I just did a video on... So I do videos for Tactical Hive, and I did a video on trying to get to like, hey, worst case scenario, and it's called quick draw theory. And basically what I did was I put an experienced high level competition guy against the thug. And so I put rules on the competition guy, say, hey, you got to follow the law. You can't engage your threat until you know it's absolutely a threat. And I told the inexperienced shooter guy, had very little experience with firearms. I said, your rules are to get him. And this competition shooter, who's very good, couldn't even get his gun out of his holster before that guy was able to get rounds on him, because he had no rules. And I took some heat from the comments. Say, oh, that's not realistic. And I'm like, it's absolutely realistic. You know, it's what's going to happen to you on the street, right?
When you're going against another person, you don't get to control them.
Well, you want to change those odds and you want to work towards that. But, you know, things happen so fast in life. Same on the battlefield, all that stuff. And this is the stuff that I was missing from training in a martial arts school, you know, or any kind of competition thing, you know, and the concept of, oh, I'm the champion really kind of blows my mind. You know, people fight to become the best. That concept to me just doesn't make sense because, you know, from life experience and, you know, maybe some brainwashing from my old man, he's like, you know, there's always somebody better, you know, and keeping that in mind. You know,
when you said your brother ended up going in the Army, when you went into the Marine Reserves, for either one of you, did your dad support that decision, or was there pushback from your dad in either one of you going into the military?
For my brother, he was very supportive, because he went into the Army and he was and my brother was going into a language program. And he was very supportive of it. For me, well, as far as I know, he seemed very supportive of it. For me, I just showed up at the dojo one day and I said, hey, Dad, I joined the Marine Corps. He lost his mind because my whole life, he told me never join the Marine Corps, never go into the military.
When you made the hop to the Navy side, did that change anything?
No, so at first he lost his mind, but he was supportive in the end. He's like, hey, you're doing something with your life. But he just did not, because he had such a bad experience when he was in the Marine Corps, that he just felt that it was the worst service to join. Like, if I would have signed up for the Air Force or maybe the Coast Guard or something, he would have been fine with that, I think.
It was just not wanting you to follow in his footsteps per se.
Well, he went through Marine Corps boot camp in the 50s, right? So things were quite a bit different. Yeah, like, you know, my dad's mouth, he had like one tooth up front and some teeth in the back, but almost all his teeth were missing. And it's from a rifle butt from a drill instructor. So, and some of the tortures that he actually had to experience while going through boot camp. He thought it was way over the top, because all of his drill instructors were Korean War veterans that were battle hardened. In fact, one of his drill instructors was a Marine Raider, the old school Marine Raiders. So, it was the 50s.
Did your dad do a career?
No. I don't know the whole story, but I think he ended up getting separated from the Marine Corps too.
So now you've made the decision, you're going to leave the Marine Reserves, you're going to go into the Navy.
Yes.
Was your goal from the day you decided to go into the Navy to go towards a SEAL program?
Yes. So after talking to a guy named Brad O'Neill, who's no longer with us, but he kind of planted the seed, and then I started doing research on the program, and I decided, a friend of mine who was also in the reserves, we both kind of like, hey man, take a look at this program. And we were like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's way better than trying to go active duty and change MOS, become an infantry guy and go to recon. This seems like a better program. So, and it's the Navy. How hard could it be? What's funny is,
now you said this was 1989?
I think it was 1980, around 89.
Were they already doing SEAL contracts at that time, or did you have to go in and then get your way there?
Well, they had SEAL contracts. It was called, what did they call that? I can't remember what the program was called. You still had to go through a rate. So you still had to get a rate and go through that basic rate training.
But only the training. You didn't have to do 2 years or something in that rate.
No. You just had to pick a Seafarer program. That's what it was called. So Seafarer program was for EOD, Navy divers, SEAL teams, and I think SAR swimmer was included back there. I could be wrong on that, but I think they were included on that program. And so the funny thing is when I was in the Marine Corps, so at that time, there was no inter-service transfer. And the Marine Corps, so I went to my training officer, who was a force recon guy in the reserve. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he looked at me and he says, "Do you really want to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Because everybody I had gone through, so I had gone through my chain of command, they're like, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that. No, you can't do that." So I went to him because I figured, hey, he's a force recon guy, maybe has some insight, And he says, "Do you really want to do that?" He's like, "I can make this happen, but we're going to have to jump through some hoops." And so I had to re-enlist into the Navy. I had to sign a letter saying that I would promise to re-enlist into another before the Marine Corps would let me go. And I had to go through Navy boot camp. So going in the Marine Corps, one of the first things they teach you when you go into the Marine Corps boot camp is that you'll never have to go through anybody's boot camp again. Right? But because of the way it all worked out, the Navy didn't have a transfer program from one service to another at that particular time. So I had to go through Navy boot camp. So going from the Marine Corps to Navy boot camp, and I was before I went, I talked to a bunch of old school sailors. And they're like, "Hey man, boot camp's no joke, right? And it's pretty difficult." And so I turn on, cause I'm still a boot anyway. Right. And I remember, turning on that switch from Marine Corps boot camp, because Marine Corps boot camp isn't fun. It's harsh. And I learned a lot of lessons out of there. So I went to Navy boot camp with that mentality. And it was still kind of fresh with me. So it was an easy thing to do. And I get there and it was, I hate to say it was a joke. I was like, there was some cool, even my, back then they were called company commanders. They're like the DIs, right? they're telling me to relax and, hey, man, have a good time with this. And, you know, it was like, okay, all right. So, and then I started, you know, when I was in Navy boot camp, I'm like, how hard is this buds thing going to be? You know, if this is how the Navy does stuff, you know, because I still had that Marine pride and all that stuff. Boy, I went through Corps school. I went as a corpsman, and then got through Corps school, and then got to buds, and holy crap, that was an eye opener. I actually,
where's the calm down? Where's the relax?
Yeah. A whole nother game. It was a big surprise and eye opener. I had been training, but I kind of was training. I was training as hard as anybody else around me, but I wasn't like putting the effort that I should have been doing, because Corps school was fun. Right. You know, it was a mix, males and females together. I mean, it was a party, you know, yeah, you had to do your corpsman stuff, but it was, and at the time in Great Lakes, the people that were in Corps school, you have all the different rates at that training center. Corps school individuals were they got liberty almost immediately. So we were out in town, having a good time, you know, it was like kind of like being in college, you know, with a uniform. And,
but in the back of your head, you knew that you needed to be preparing to go into buds.
Yeah, and there was in this dive fair, it was dive fair program. There were a bunch of people that were going to buds, so we would get together and work out, and everybody, you know, that lasts for about maybe 2 weeks, and everybody then goes their own way. And you know, the party life and all the, you know, distractions that can happen were there, and you know. They had what was known as dive motivators at the facility that you can work out with and stuff like that. But at that time, what they provided wasn't much. You know, okay, yeah, do 500 meters in the pool, or, you know, hey, you need to learn how to do the side stroke, or they'd show you how to do the side stroke. But they didn't really tell you anything about training. They just would tell you, oh, man, you're going to quit, or, oh, it's going to suck for you. And I'm thinking, you know. But then I got there, and I was probably the worst student, one of the worst guys there.
Academic wise?
No, just overall, you know, I didn't make it all the way through. So I made it through first phase, got through Hell Week, got into dive phase, got dropped in dive phase for a bunch of reasons. Academic reasons. I had an attitude with one of the instructors. That was really the thing that put the nail in the coffin. And then what was strange is they, you know, when I got dropped from training, they were like, hey, we want you to come back. And at that point, I made it through Hell Week. You know, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to come back. So I ended up going to, because I was a corpsman, I ended up getting shipped to MCRD, of all places, in the clinic there. So not too long before, I was a guy walking through getting shots from the corpsman, thinking, oh, these Navy guys, because the Marine Corps immediately starts, at that time, would always talk crap about all the other services, and you're, you know, the squids and the, you know, the Army dudes and all that. It was stupid. But now I was the guy giving shots to recruits coming in, and wow, I was like, oh boy, this really blows. But what was going on was I was a buds drop, and there were a bunch of new corpsmen that were in the dive fair program that were waiting to go to buds. And so they came to me. So there was like 3 of us that had come from buds to work at this clinic. They came to me because they knew I made it through Hell Week. They knew I at least handled first phase, right? And so they asked me to train them. Hey, train with us and all that. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll work out with you. So I started training these guys, getting them prepared for buds, and after I think it was about a month, the numbers are dropping off. People are falling away. Next thing I know, I'm the only guy working out. And I'm like, shit, you know what? I'm going to put my package in. So I resubmitted my package and I trained my balls off and made it through them.
Was it difficult to get another shot to go back in at that time?
No, it wasn't. I think it's more difficult now. The way the whole program's set up is completely different. So I couldn't tell you what the process is now, but back then, excuse me. When I went, pull
that mic. There you go.
Yeah, when I went to Buds, there were guys who had been to Buds like 3-4 times already from the fleet that were just trying to get through the program. There was one guy, he had been through Hell Week 3 times, and one of those times he quit, but he had already, and now he was there again when I was there, there were a lot of, I don't know what the number was, but it was probably about 40% of the students were retreads, either got rolled back or had to go away for a while and come back to the program. And there were at least 3 or 4 guys while I was at Buds that had been there 3-4 times already. So it was strange. In fact, when I went back the second time, there was a guy that was in my class who had quit in Hell Week, and we were in the same class again,
The second time through, were you able to kind of get I'll call it your attitude issue under control?
Yeah, I was 26 at that point. So, a little bit more mature, had good focus on what I wanted to accomplish. Because what was good was that period before, it was all me focusing on what I wanted to accomplish. And so I did it on my own, and I really knew the direction that I had to go. So, I was probably running anywhere from 40 to 80 miles a week on a regular basis. And, I would train 2 to 3 times a day, doing different, not all the same stuff, but, and I was in physically better shape and, could handle things a little bit better. And that being said, it wasn't any easier.
But second time through, made it?
Made it through, yeah.
So you're 26 years old. You're now a SEAL. Were you thinking for yourself that this was going to be a career? Was it just a short-term thing for you? When you first started out, what were you thinking?
Well, when I first went in the teams, there's no war going on, right? I wasn't sure. I was getting out the entire time that I was in, if that makes sense. So I never planned on making it a career. I wanted to go on the SEAL teams, do the job for a little while, and then go find something else to do. And then, once I got through this crazy training process of Buds, STT is what it was called back then, not SQT. It was Buds. Then I had to go to airborne school. I had to go through dive medicine school. Then I had to go through 18 Delta, the short course, 6 months, right? Made it through that in one shot, which was a big surprise because it was a guy who barely made it out of high school. And when I checked into 18 Delta, all these really smart guys who had college degrees had been dropped from training. and it freaked me out. So it made me focus in on, okay, I've got to put the effort into this because it was a tough program. I mean, the SF runs, their schools are phenomenal. I've been through a bunch of their schools, and they just run a really professional thing. You know, an 18 Delta, you know, was part of their selection process. And so when we got there after graduating buds, they kind of treated us like we were going through their selection process. So that was kind of a pain in the butt.
What was the reasoning for sending you to an Army school?
So back then, all the corpsmen had to go through the short course 18 Delta. If you were high enough ranked, you would go through the long course, or you were a corpsman coming from the teams, then you would go through the whole program, the year. I don't know. I think it was a year at the time, maybe a little bit longer than a year. And those guys, I mean, hey, my hat's off to all the like long course 18 Delta guys. I mean, they're 18 Delta is living proof that the med school process is ridiculous, because what they accomplish in that year is just, it's incredible. Like the stuff that they learn. The 6 months that I was there, I learned incredible stuff. I mean, it's one of the few military courses that I've been through where leaving that course, I was absolutely prepared to do my job.
So even though you'd already gone through Navy corpsman school,
right? 18
Delta was the varsity as far as medical training, comparatively speaking.
Oh yeah, it was like being in med school. You know, it was 8 hours a day, every day. Medicine. You know, for the short course, it was focused mainly on trauma. You know, and that was, I mean, every day. And then all the academic side of it, it was difficult. For a guy who barely made it out of high school, it was real difficult. I had to study a lot. So, but a great course.
When you made the comment previously that you were always in the process of getting out your entire career. Mm-hmm. So how many enlistments did you end up doing?
Well, I ended up doing 25 years in the Navy. So, whatever that is.
And what was it, just, kind of in an encapsulated form, each time when it was coming up for a re-enlistment, what was the mental or internal struggle that you were going through?
There was no struggle. I loved the job. I hated aspects of the job. I hated being cold, wet, and miserable all the time. But all that stuff that was missing in the dojo, I was learning in the teams. So all that, and it wasn't about punching and kicking or anything like that. It was all that stuff that actually makes a warrior. The obligations, the work that may not even be any kind of combative thing. It is, working with a team, and it was awesome. And it's a subculture, in that, the SEAL community, and then there's subcultures inside of that too. So yeah, I just loved it. I bought into it 100%, and I just loved it. But I still was always in my mind, I'm getting out. I'm getting next enlistment, I'm going to get out.
And then it was just a matter of when it came time, it was just not wanting to give up what you were doing, just kind of too much fun.
Well, 9/11 kicked off, and now we got to do, so I spent nine years training my ass off. And now we got 9/11 happens, and now I get to implement those skill sets. And that changed everything. Beyond all the patriotic stuff and we're doing this for your teammates and all that, it's all important. But really it was, there's something about being over there that I can't explain, that it's, I don't know if it's a sickness or it's like an addiction. Once you experience that life and the way you live, as complicated as is, it's very simple. You know, every decision you make matters. Take, for instance, if, let's say, I send an email to my wife, you know, for a care package. Let's say, hey, you know, send me 10 pairs of socks, 2 rolls of Copenhagen, and a bag of gummy bears. Okay, whatever it is. Okay. When you decide to do that, you know that some guy or gal is going to have to strap on their body armor, pick up their gun, get in a Humvee, and drive through the most dangerous areas and bring you your socks in Copenhagen and your gummy bears. So the decisions to make, hey, you know, send us a case of monsters or whatever it is. Somebody's going to have to risk their life to do that, to bring that crap to you. And so you think about those things when you're over there. And so every decision is nonsensical as it seems, like deciding to go to the bathroom. Okay. In one of the porta-johns. Okay. I got to go do number 2 in the porta-john. Well, we've been getting mortared every day for the last, 2 weeks. Do I really want to go do that? And in fact, I've seen dudes take a mortar while they're in the porta-john, everything matters. Every decision matters. And I loved it. You didn't have to think about what's going to happen 6 months down the road. You didn't have to think about what's going to happen the next week. You just need to think about what's happening in front of you. And all you needed to worry about was the space around you, the people around you. And it was, I don't know, it just felt clean. It's sick as that sounds. It
makes sense, though.
It feels cleaner living that way than how we live in the first world, because everything's real. Back here, everything is, the things people complain about, the things that weigh on their minds. Especially when you're fresh off the battlefield and you see the things that people are worrying about and what they're stressing over, you're like, you ain't going to die from it. Nobody's going to get hurt from this. You're going to be inconvenienced. But yeah, I mean, that world was amazing to me. So after that, it was pretty much my future was written at that point, because I just enjoyed it too much.
Was your family supportive through the entire process?
Yes. My wife, she's a rock star. Yeah, she put up with a lot of shit. So, the crap she put up with, very supportive. And she knew the pre-war days, which essentially was the mentality that we had. Are you worried about cussing? Okay. So the mentality we had was drink, fuck, fight. That was our life. And my wife and I, we met in that time period of my life. And it was definitely juvenile, but that was the subculture that I belonged to, and once the war kicked off, it was still kind of the same mentality, but it was different. It was a more mature version of that, as opposed to living the pirate life and all that other, nonsensical, the brotherhood and all that you see in all the movies. It's much bigger and better than that once the war came off. It's more than just the brotherhood. There's something else there that I don't know how to describe it.
Not to be overly simplistic, but once you actually encounter war, it all of a sudden, I would imagine, makes it real, where prior to that, the war aspect was always what you were thinking about, but didn't really have the ability to touch it realistically?
Yeah, the training before the war, I felt was harder than after the war started. The training was more physically demanding, in my opinion, and I was younger. It was more intense because everybody talked about the theory of war. You know what I mean? They didn't, and they had lessons learned from the Vietnam era guys. Like, we still had Vietnam era instructors that were still in the community, and they were, giving us good advice and all this other stuff. But it was, the people that were really my next level teachers who weren't the Vietnam vets. They were the students of the Vietnam vets, right? And they were teaching us, and they were giving us their theory on it. But once that war kicked off, it was a different animal. And when you train, you always train for the last war you were in. So a lot of the stuff was based on Vietnam type tactics and mentality, which a lot of the younger guys say, all that antiquated. It's not antiquated. It's just some of the stuff was not appropriate for the urban environment for obvious reasons. It's a different environment. So a lot of the lessons learned that were learned in Vietnam that we had trickled down to us younger guys that now we're faced with the urban combat just didn't apply at that particular time. And so you got a lot of people, well, it doesn't apply, so it's no good. But that's not true. All the work that those guys did in Vietnam and all those lessons learned, if we do go to an environment like that, guys are going to have to relearn those lessons. And guess what? That it's going to be blood spilt to relearn lessons instead of trying to take those lessons all the way through. You know what I mean?
Let's get to your hand. Tell me about that incident. How'd that happen?
So how do I want to explain this? All right. Because I don't want to get anybody, hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that. So I had just gotten back from my first deployment to Iraq, and I had a great experience. That first deployment, we did a lot of direct actions. And then we got tasked with the job of protecting the president of Iraq, the interim president that the U.S. government put in place because of the first guy got assassinated. And the contract side wasn't going to cover down on him. So President Bush called SEAL Team 1 that was over there, said, hey, and SEAL Team 2, you're going to protect the new government. So we ended up having to protect, the president and the prime minister. SEAL Team 2 covered down on the prime minister, and we covered down on the president. And there was a bunch of other government officials. Platoons were going to different officials and stuff like that. So the whole, dynamic DAs that we were doing had to come to a stop for us. The GROM and the MARSOC's first, they called it Det 1, but we called it MARSOC back then. Their first deployment was with us at SEAL Team 1. So they took over the DA and the GROM. The GROM and them took over the DA side, and we ended up having to do protection. Well, at that time, this was 03, 04 time period, Baghdad started blowing up. Things started getting crazy. So we would have to farm people out to different things. And then Najaf, the unspoken battle. Everybody talks about Fallujah and Mosul and all, and Ramadi, but they never talk about Najaf. I was a sniper at the time. I was the lead sniper in the platoon, and the Army had requested sniper support from NSW. So I got pulled out of the protection detail, and I had to go to Najaf and support, I think it was the 7th Cav, pushing through Najaf, which was pretty crazy. And that, it's going to sound sick. It was a horrifying experience, but I loved it. It really, that's all I wanted to do at that point. After 2 days of being on the battlefield like that, because it was full on urban, get after it fighting. And it was, I don't know if it was because of all the training we had done prior to the war that just, wow, I'm doing all my skill sets, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's the clean living, as they call it. It just was, for me, it was like the worst kind of like drug addiction. So after Najaf, we get done with the deployment. I come home. We go on pre-deployment, post-deployment leave. I come back. We've got a new platoon leadership. Ty Woods was one of my platoon chiefs. And he had come to me and he said, "Hey, look, I want to send you to an advanced breacher course." I'm like, "Well, I'm not a breacher. Why would you send me to the advanced breacher course?" He's like, No, it's not about that. I want you to know, I want you to have an idea what these guys have to deal with. So when you're on Overwatch and you're reporting back, you can give us good information. Can you maybe even tell us what charges we need, all that other stuff? You can at least look at the target and be able to give me the, good information for the assault force to come in and do what they got, for the breachers to do what they got to do. I'm like, oh, okay, so I'll do it. So I go to this advanced breacher course up at Camp Pendleton, or where we're at, down at Camp Pendleton from here. And we're going through this course, and there are all these experienced breachers, and there's some new guy breachers and stuff. And the training was very advanced. Let's put it that way. And a lot of the stuff that we were doing was kind of new, and we were breaking rules to do it by direction. Okay. And so
was the battlefield dictating new methods?
Yes. Okay. So let me explain this. So in a unit like a SEAL team or SF team or, Rangers, whatever, if you're not pushing the tactics to become faster and more efficient and faster and more efficient, basically, then you're not advancing the skill sets, right? And it has to be done. And how do you do that? Well, anybody that's trained anything, you have to go as far as to the point where the wheels start to come off of your abilities, right? You got to push past your comfort zone. And that's really what this course was doing. And so I don't have any ill feelings towards this. I don't want to get anybody, I'm not looking for a pity party on this, but we were breaking rules to try to find more efficient ways to do it. Things that were written in blood by who knows, however long they were written. And so a bunch of the training, some of the advanced breachers, some of the training was so aggressive that they had gone to the training cell, "Hey, we're not going to do that because these safety reasons, blah, blah, blah," and all that. So we had done that several times with different areas of training. When I say we, not me, because I was just like looking around going, okay, what do I need to do here? What do I need to do there? Because I wasn't a breacher. I was a sniper. That was my thing. And I was just trying to, I knew some, obviously I knew some things about demo, but we were breaking some of those basic demo rules. And so we're doing some training where we're trying to shorten the time at the door, placing the charges, because that's kind of where the hang up was when we do an assault on a building. We were getting hung up. Somebody decided we were spending too much time at the door to set the breacher charges up. Okay. So they had come up with these techniques that rules were broken in order to make these, to try and gain seconds. Nothing we were going to do is going to give us minutes. So it was always about seconds and microseconds, of just being more efficient. And so we had to break some rules to do that. So one of the things that they want us to do was an A breacher and a B breacher. The old days, and I don't know if they've gone to this methodology nowadays, but essentially the guy placing the charge, the guy who has the charge has the firing device. Okay, so they split it up. The B breacher had the firing device, the A breacher had the device. So the goal is slap the charge on and get the hell away as fast as you can, and then blow the door. That's the simple way of explaining it without getting into the details. So before the day of training, we had to build all these charges, practice charges for blowing in doors. So that's another rule that we broke. It's like we were using charges that somebody else built, not us, right? So I had a charge. It was the last charge of the day, and it was getting twilighty, kind of grayish, dark, and I just remember I was my partner. He's like, "Hey, man, we're gonna do last charge." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And he was a new guy breacher too. He wasn't like this really experienced guy. And I remember before doing it, he hands me the charge, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of sloppy, whatever." And I remember, so the iPro was required on ranges, but I never wore it. Okay. I just hated it for whatever reason. It was part of my little rebellion.
Who needs eyeballs?
Hey, man, I just made it through a deployment in Iraq, heavy combat. I never wore iPro for that. What do I need this for, right? But there was a voice, my voice in the back of my head said, "Hey, put your iPro on." Now, the iPro I had were these old Bolle assaulter glasses, and they've been on my helmet for probably the last 4 years that I never wore. I always had my eye protection with me, and I was wearing it, right? It was on my helmet, but I never put it on my face. So when I put it on my face, it's all scratched up and gnarled, and it's just junk, right? And I said, "Oh, I'm not going to wear it." And I flipped it back up on my helmet. And then I said to myself, "Put your iPro on." I'm like, I don't want to wear my iPro. And this went on for we're waiting to go do our turn.
This is an internal debate that you're having with yourself.
And I'm like, this voice, which I thought was mine, I don't think it was, but kept telling me to put my damn iPro on. So I'm like, fuck it. Okay, our time comes up. I throw my iPro on. It's twilight. It's kind of hard to see. We weren't, we weren't running night vision because we were still at daylight going on. So we didn't have none of our night vision with us. So, because we were lazy, right? We didn't want to wear, getting sloppy. And so our term comes up, and we get our little team together to go place the charge. And, and we're all in competition. Who can do it the fastest, right? That's the way the teams are, is, once you start getting the feel of how to do things, then the watches start coming out. Everybody starts timing everybody, and everybody starts, because really what's it about? It's about becoming more efficient, fast. And so it becomes a competition between the guys. And so we're the last run. I run up to the door. I slap the charge on the door, and it falls apart. And I'm like, instead of me going, "Hey, everybody stop," I just basically, it was a simple fix. I just fixed it, and it went off. So the B breacher had fired the device because, remember, it's about speed, and the way that we were rolling the firing device, it wasn't like he could see both of us. So it was getting dark, right? So he had to look down. So he saw me place the charge, and he immediately looked at the firing device, because the way it was happening is guy runs up, slaps the charge, and runs away, boom, it gets fired off. Okay, so, and that had been, and him and I had done it 3 or 4 times at this point. So this was just another run, and we were getting pretty fast. And I had slapped the charge on the door, and it fell apart, and I started putting it together. I got it back together, and then everything went white, you know. And I was like, immediately I was like, oh, shit. You know, as all the blood out of my eyes, everything was white, and that, you know, like, you ever play video games where they have flash crashes, you get the white, and it was exactly like that. So whoever came up with that in video games, it had been blowing up before. And everything started to come back into focus, and I remember standing there, and, you know, I remember thinking, oh, crap, I lost my right hand, because this hurt so bad. My left hand just felt cool, like temperature-wise. But my right hand felt like, you know, you take a nail and a hammer and you miss the nail and you hit your thumb. Well, imagine that through your whole hand. That's what this, you know, every bone in my right hand got shattered, but stayed in place. That hurt a lot. I remember, like, as the explosion went off, that didn't hurt. But as my awareness started coming back to me, holy crap, that hurt. So I said to myself, all right, don't look at the right hand. Look at the left hand. Let's see what's going on. I look back, and I see spaghetti sitting on my forearm. And I'm like, oh, crap. And I remember turning around, and one of the training cell guy, awesome dude, comes running up. He's like, hey, Tosh, sit down. You'll be all right. You know, he's trying to control me. I'm like, I'm good. And then I see blood just squirting out, and I fall down, and they wrap me up, get me to the hospital, and that's that, you know.
No loss of consciousness? To your knowledge?
I had a moment of weakness, I gotta admit. The shock started to happen. I didn't like lose it, but I did, you know, and they rode me down, you know, they helped me down, and then they bandaged me up, tourniquet, all that stuff. Fast, super fast. One of the guys that was with me, he was a former Army medic that now was in the teams. A guy named Gonzo, awesome dude. He got the tourniquet on like that, and they got me to the hospital pretty darn quick, and then started rehab after that.
What year is this?
This is 04.
And obviously you knew right away you'd lost your hand.
Yes.
Tell me about how because there's two avenues I want to go down here with this. Obviously, there is just coming to the realization of now living the rest of your life without your hand. But you also pushed through that and actually came back to full duty. So I'd like to know both aspects of it. Initially, was there a point where you and maybe your family are like, okay, you're done? And then you're like, nope, I want to get back? Or did you know right away, I'm going to figure out a way to get back?
Well, I'll tell the story and let you determine what happened. So I come out of surgery. My wife's there. My CO and my command master chief are there. And I'm coming out of it, you know, I'm hopped up on all these drugs, and I'm laying there, and I'm like, wow. And I really didn't have a whole lot of time. As far as I remember I was doped up pretty good. My wife talks to me, and, you know, real supportive, and, you know, doing great stuff. And then my command master chief and my CO are there, and they start talking to me about how they're going to take care of me and maybe find me an contract instructor job and training cell. And all I heard was, you can't. You're done. And he didn't mean that, what he was saying. He was looking out for me. And I told him, fuck you. Don't give up my spot. I'll be back. Part of that was my high from the last deployment, that drug I needed to get, you know, because all I want to do was get back overseas. So that addiction to that environment was probably the number one motivator to get me back up on my feet, because that's all I wanted to do. And I look on that now and I think, man, is that a sickness? I don't know. But it was the thing that got me back up on my feet. 3 months later, I was back in training. And then I showed up to a block of training. Our land warfare phase in the workup. I had missed one block of training. I don't remember what it was. But land warfare was the next phase, because that 3 months I was rehabbing. I was rehabbing hard. Which that process was kind of weird, because the hospital had set up, this occupational therapy stuff, and it was this, how do I say it? The guy, was good guy, the occupational therapist, but he was this effeminate, and there was no C4 program. There was none of this stuff at that time. It was just traditional military care, right? And the guy was effeminate, and he just, he didn't have that go-getter at it. Hey, squeeze the ball. And I'm like, this ain't going to be enough. So I stopped going to the appointments with the occupational therapy, and I said, I'm going to train the way I need to train. The good thing is NSW had a great physical therapist there. And he cut me no slack. He didn't treat me. He was actually harder on me than he was the other guys. He's like, hey, man, you want this? You got to do it, and he was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And he was incredible help. He ended up, I think, going to Damnack and becoming their physical therapist. The guy was awesome. And he helped me through that process, and he pushed.
Was he a civilian or a former?
He's a civilian. He was I don't know if he was a GS or a contract guy that NSW had established this really nice, robust.
But he just got the mindset of what of the guys he was treating.
Oh yeah, he was. I think he was a trainer for professional baseball teams prior to, and some other professional sports. I don't know the whole story on him. Great dude. So he pushed me in a way that was, it's on you, right? He wouldn't chase me down. He wouldn't, pamper me or anything like that. But when I was doing whatever I was doing, he would, get in my face if I was being a little lazy, and he just kept me going, with a harsher, I grew up with a harsher way. And that was exactly what he used with me, and it was perfect. It got me back into training 3 months later, which was land warfare, and which is probably, that's man camp, right? So Nyland is where there's two phases of training where you really get a good reputation or you get a bad reputation. That's the CQB assaults phase, and then land warfare was traditionally, hey, are you a frogman? Or are you a SEAL, right? And you wanted to be a frogman. So Nyland was the place that you learned that, right? So, it's all the weapons and the demo and the tactics, combat style and all that stuff. And it's tough. It's a tough, about a month long of just every day grinding it out. And I show up with my bags, and everybody's like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to train. And one of the lead guys in the training cell was a friend of mine, because a couple of years prior, I was working the training cell, and he walks out the front door and he sees me with all my stuff, packing it up, trying to bring it into the building. And he's like, he's got his arms crossed. He's looking at me. He was like, what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to train. He's like, I ain't cutting you any slack. I'm like, shut the fuck up and get out of my way. But he's.
So 2 questions I have. First one, from the opposite side of the fence, Navy Command, were they on board with you trying to get back to full duty, or were they basically trying to block that process?
Nobody blocked anything. It was a weird dynamic, right? So one, I didn't give them the opportunity to say no. At the same time, they let me get away with it. My Master Chief and my CO, awesome guys. They were like, okay, let's see what he does with this. I don't know what's going on through their heads. It's just what it appeared to me. I said, okay, let's see what you got.
So in general, there wasn't a big block wall trying to say, hey, you lost your hand, you need to retire.
There were some people, I'm sure, in the community that were like just pissed off that I was doing what I was doing for right reasons, right? Like, are you going to be at jeopardy? Are you going to hurt your team by being there? And that was a huge concern for me, personally. And Nyland was the place to test it because we're doing all these different tactics, and I'd have to manipulate certain weapon systems, and how I had to make it work, right? Can I do my job?
My second question, and that's where it leads right into. So for those not watching the video, you're operating with a fixed single hook on your left
I had
hand.
a different device at the time.
That's what I was going to ask. So what
if I would have had this, it would have been easier.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I can easily see, hitting a charging handle.
It's just the simpler the device, the better. And I went through, the robotic hands, the iLimbs, and all these different things that were out there. I had a body part, so I didn't want anything with batteries. I wanted something that can get wet, and still provide what I needed to provide. So I had this device that had essentially a pincher, not the traditional hook pincher, which I probably should have gone with, but this was a device that what's known as a voluntary close system. So I could grip floor grips and stuff like that on weapons, and it was a carbon fiber, sleeve, and I could swim it and all that other stuff. And it was a good device, and man, you didn't want to get hit by that thing. It was kind of heavy. But that's what I used, and it worked just fine. I had to relearn and reteach myself how to do things, and I do things quite a bit different than most guys. But I had to think through that process of how I was going to accomplish that. And so Nyland Land Warfare was really, that stuff I talked about, what you don't learn in the dojo, I was learning right there. And that was kind of like SEAL Dojo right there. But I did learn. It made me have to think about my process of everything that I did. And it worked out. So there was humble brag right here. Okay. There was we have this, back then we called it the Foreign Weapons Rattle Battle. So, but it wasn't just foreign weapons. So it was this final test of, so you had down men, you had to go to these different stations, shoot these weapon systems, they tally up the points, your time, and all that other stuff, and drag people and shoot all these different weapon systems. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be a good test, because it's a difficult thing. At the end of it, you're sucking wind, and you're just like, holy crap, and so I do it, but I take a different strategy to it. So I decided, hey, I'm not going to worry about speed. I'm going to worry about accuracy and making everything that I do matter. And I'm not going to push trying to do everything super fast. I'm just going to do everything deliberately. And so I get done with that thing. I'm smoked at the end of it. And they called us we get done with that evolution, and we go to the training room, and we get our debrief. And one of the LPO of the course comes walking in. He's got the scores. He's, with the teams, everything's competition, right? And he comes in, and he's pissed off. Well, he's not really pissed off, but he's acting like he's pissed off, right? And he's reading off the scores, and I'm dead center of the pack of the team. So I had beat out almost all of the new guys and some of the older guys.
I'm sure that didn't cause any shit talking.
From training cell? I mean, but it was the moment that I realized, okay, I can do the job. You know what I mean?
And this is only 3 months removed from the incident.
That was probably month 4. 3 and somewhere in there. Yeah.
But was this your personal test to see if you could come back to full duty?
It was both. So what I didn't know at the time is that SEAL Team 1 was looking hard, and they were talking to training cell about what was going on behind the scenes. I didn't know that was going on at the time. But for me, it was, hey, if I can't handle nylon, then I can't do the job. You know what I mean? Because right now the focus was Iraq, urban warfare, land warfare stuff. So,
because I'd imagine even behind the scenes, you had to be a pretty big topic of conversation.
I had no idea at the time because I was so focused on what I had to do. So I don't know what was going on in the backgrounds, what anybody was saying or doing. I know I had a lot of people that were actually naysaying me being there and doing all that stuff. I know that for a fact. And they still thought, even though I did really well out at Island, I mean, I faced it personally on several different deployments. People are like, what are you doing here? But understandably, I don't have any, I understand where that guy's coming from.
Right.
So, yeah. So I got through that particular thing, and then, that was like, okay, I can do this. And then we started getting into the tactics phase where we're doing live fire contact drills and all that stuff. And they're throwing in multiple down men, and I was the medic. And so I had to do my medic stuff. I was able to, get the IVs in and do what I needed to do. And then there were things that I ended up doing, like, so when you're in a contact and you get a wounded guy, the number one priority is to win the fight. So if let's say they always put the machine gunners down, right? Because they're usually the biggest dudes with the most weight, and they're carrying, the machine gun, the belt-fed machine gun. So I had been at the time, it was a combat casualty care instructor, where, it's all about tactics mixed with medicine. And so I knew, when there was a down man, if nobody was on that machine gun, I need to get that machine gun up and running so we can get the guy out of the area. So there were a couple times where I had to pick up this big ass machine gun and rock it, and it worked just fine. I was able to handle it, manage it, and get after it. And, and then switch out, because it was also the medic, right? Just because you're the medic doesn't mean you hop on the guy right away. You win the fight is the priority, right? So got on the gun, did my thing. And as people are replace people for whatever, and somebody else took the machine gun, I would have to fireman's carry. I had to do all that stuff. So, I was able to do all that stuff. So And
you ultimately did how many more years then after?
So I retired in 2015. I did.
So about 10 more years, 10-ish more years?
Yeah. I did 4 more combat deployments. So
from a strictly operational standpoint, what did you find to be your biggest limitation?
Probably the thing that we weren't doing a lot of was like shipboarding and stuff like that. That would have been a difficult task for me, just because you got to climb ladders and do all that other stuff. And the hook that I had at the time, I wouldn't have any problems with this hook today, with that stuff. But that was probably like the waterborne, ship attack or GoPlat type gas and oil platform sieges probably would have been probably a game changer for me as far as like me staying in or not. I didn't do a lot of that, so.
Were you getting hit up by a lot of prosthetic companies to want to work with you to try to help develop a better platform for you?
So I was working with a company named Scope. I don't think it exists anymore. The prosthetists that were there were awesome. Every crazy idea I had for a prosthetic. Well, when I first met them, I gave them my criteria for what I want from a prosthetic, and they were like, okay. And they pretty much made some pretty interesting devices for me. They were all body powered for that. I had a iLim and some electronic ones that I ended up never really using. It was a waste of money. But as far as like the devices, they would try to make what I was asking them to make. And it was funny. Randy, the main guy that was working with me, when I first came to him, he says, with your situation, you're probably only going to want an opposition board, which is essentially a device that, because I have my wrist, that I could just pinch things between. And he was 90% right, and he'd been working this stuff for a long time. But I didn't, I wanted, I got to do this, I got to do that. The head's all I was concerned about is getting overseas, right? And having a device that was going to help me out. And so, and I came up with some ideas. They built them. They built every one of them that I asked for. And I don't use any of them. The final design was essentially this. Something that looks so basic is so simple. Best thing for you. It ended up, I'm a unique situation because I still have my wrist, right? I don't have thumb. I don't have any of the top part of my hand, essentially. But having the wrist actually is very helpful. Why the surgeon decided, because normally when they do amputations, they cut you off right at the wrist. For whatever reason, he decided, hey, let's leave the wrist with him and take everything else. So he knew something. I'm glad he did that, but it made using traditional prosthetics very difficult. So when Randy saw me, he's like, hey, man, you might want to try, opposite. And I did. And at first I was like, this isn't good enough. This is not enough. You know what I mean? And it wasn't. That's essentially, this is an opposition board with a hook on it, right? So his original assessment was actually correct. And, the mind has, you don't always listen to the right answer. So, he was ahead of me. When you ended up getting back and got to deploy again, did you go back out as a sniper or as a corpsman? I was so both. So point man most of the time. The next deployment, I was the lead sniper, point man, and that was my work. That's what I did. But it's weird because they paid me point man, but I was also a sniper, right? So I was the lead sniper. So I couldn't always work if I was working as a sniper, I couldn't work as the point man. You can't be in two places at one time. So, and I was a medic in the platoon, and usually the medic is in a different part of the stack, depending on how many medics you have at the time. But bottom line is they never put any limitations on you as far as duty assignments. No, I put limitations on myself. If I thought I was going to be a hindrance to the team, I would put myself in I would talk to the chief, hey, you might want to have somebody else do this. If there's a lot of nitnoid technical finger manipulation stuff, I wouldn't be involved. And I really never really was, anyway. So, yeah, but I would look ahead. What's the mission? What are we doing? Blah, blah, blah. So, mental space question. Any issues since then or immediately afterwards with breachings and close proximity to explosives? No, I never liked the idea personally carrying frags, just because you're carrying around a prime piece of explosive, but they're great tools. So, I didn't carry them just for the fact that I couldn't pull the pin. So I just carry more mags. and let the other guys, double down on that stuff, which, could be an argument against me, at that time. But I got a team of guys. I got a team of badasses with me, so that all can do that, and they were willing to do it. So
2015, you finally decided it's time to hang it up.
Yeah, I didn't. The war was winding down. I could see the Navy or the teams were going in the way of the peacetime military again. And heck, I already did 25 years and I still didn't want to go, but yeah, it was time. I was getting older, fatter, and it was hard keeping up with the younger guys at that point,
From strictly a retirement aspect, is there any benefit to have gone to the 30-year mark?
I couldn't.
Oh.
So the fact that I was able to do another 5 years after 20, it's because the only reason I was able to do that is because I had signed a contract. They had something called a CR, critical rate bonus, CRB. So because of my years in and the skill sets that I had, they had this bonus for guys that pushed you out another 4 years. And there was a bonus attached to it. So it's the only because I was an E7 and essentially I was at the end of my career. I couldn't go past. I could maybe eke out another 2 years, extend out another couple of years. I don't know if they allow that or not. I can't remember what the rules are on that, but essentially I was going to have to retire at 20, but because they had this critical rate bonus, I was able to extend out another 4 years.
But when that expired, that was the end of your ride?
I think I could have extended another couple of years. Maybe got 27 years.
And I only asked that because your previous comment about how it's like from the time you got in, you were getting out, but then you would kind of that internal battle and stay in. So it just,
Well, after I lost my hand and my deployment overseas, that addiction, I want to call it, I knew, first off, to try to get out and try to join another club of some kind, because originally I was getting out and I wanted to go into the U.S. Marshals. That was, before that deployment was going to be my last deployment, and I was going to try to work my way into the Marshals at that point. But once I lost my hand, I was like, okay, I can fight to stay in the club where I have a reputation, everybody knows me, or I can try to get into a new club with this disability that people aren't going to, they're not going to go, oh, maybe this guy can do what he's saying, because they don't know me from Adam. And so I just figured, hey, I love going overseas. I love doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm in the club. They're going to allow me to try to get back in. It's not like they kicked me out or anything like that, but everybody pretty much thought I was done. I wasn't having that. And I just at that point I decided I was going to stay in.
So when you did come to your end and it's time to, leave, discharge, what was your plan for afterwards? So a year before I got out, I started getting all my security qualifications for California. So I got my guard card, my exposed carry card, and I started doing jobs. I just started doing security work while I was, but it was just kind of like to make extra money because at that point I was a sniper instructor. I was at a command where when I'm home. Right. So, just to start developing something. So when I'm getting ready, because I saw writing on the wall, as much as it sucked, it was time. And I started doing, protective work, and some
like PI-esque, but more on the security side of it, work. And then I ran into Saved in America at that point.
Oh, I want
2014.
I want to get to that. It's kind of like the last thing, but just real quick, you now do training. You're involved in teaching and training of tactics.
Yes. Well, self-defense. I wouldn't say it's about tactics. I guess you could call it self-defense tactics, which I think are completely different than battlefield tactics. You know, I teach CCW for San Diego, and I do the BSIS firearms instructor stuff for security work. And then I also teach home defense or personal defense for people, both weaponless and firearm, mainly firearm.
The one question that I have is, I'm sure a lot of guys in your same shoes are probably thinking that line of work is a very easy transition to get into. What advice would you give for somebody who's thinking about going into that training cell, that training aspect, but now working on the civilian side? What advice would you give?
The market's saturated because I'm everywhere. Not me personally, but guys like me are everywhere. I mean, just go on YouTube. Everybody's a tactical expert. Everybody is you know, they're falling back on it. It's kind of the lazy thing to do. It's the easiest lazy, but it's not easy, right? You know, the guys that are successful they're on all the social media stuff. They're making a brand of themselves. I refuse to do that because I just don't think that. For me, I don't want to become a brand, right? Because I don't want ever. I look at tactics or that type of stuff a little bit different. I think that most people, like, I am not married to any one method of doing something. There is appropriate tool for the right job, right? And the appropriate tactic for the situation, you know. And you know, I did 25 years, so I've seen tactics do full circles. You know, I've seen tactics where, like, oh, training cell's got this new way of doing something, and they show us, and they got some new whiz bang name for it, and you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, they're like, no, it's brand new. We just came up with this. You know,
we were doing that 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but a little bit different. You've added more complexity to it, or you've taken away some of the complexity, whatever the case may be. But you see it happen over and over and over again. And this is one thing about young, aggressive men, is they think that their point in time, they're the harbinger of war and tactics, and everything before them is antiquated and no good. You're doomed to failure if you think that way, you know, because all of the stuff that you have today was built upon all the stuff that these guys that came before you did. They learned the hard way to get to the point where you're at, and they've probably pushed past that point. You just think that you have all the answers. So that's one. If you're a young war fighter, don't ever think that you're the pinnacle and apex of everything that is tactical and badass, because you're not. You know, it's like the jiu-jitsu stuff, right? Yeah, you know, Gracie this, Gracie that, and don't get me wrong, they've done amazing stuff, but the stuff that they were doing, that they say they invented, they were doing in Japan in the turn of the century. You know, not the current turn of the century, the one before that, you know, and there's old videos of it, you know. And so, you know, my old man used to always say to me when I was a kid, and I never understood that. He says, never believe the hype, especially your own. It wasn't until I had been in the teams probably 16 years before I understood what he was saying, you know, and because of what I was viewing throughout my career and the changes in tactics and methodologies and all that stuff. And really they're all the same, but they're different, you know, and it's the same thing over and over again. And everybody thinks they come up with new things. Like when we started doing mobility, right? Actually using Humvees for all this stuff. There was a guy in training cell who went to the archives, and he had pulled out these old videos, or not videos, old photos of guys in World War II in Africa, like SAS guys, and they had these Jeep-like vehicles that were decked out almost exactly how we had our Humvees decked out, and we thought we had created new shit at that time, and it was. I'm looking at these photos. I'm like, what? So that was like, man, nothing new under the sun. So.
Well, and it's not that it's nothing new. It's just don't be so close-minded to looking back on the past and saying, okay, they did it that way. How can we improve it? Or how can we modify it to today as opposed to just completely disregarding it?
Yeah, but youth, what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young, young aggressive men. They're focused in their way, and they just, they think they're the pinnacle of everything that's holy, right? So they have to learn to get over that bias, and as they get older, they'll learn it. But the problem is that if you decide, oh, that's antiquated, that's no good anymore, you're a fool. Does it apply or does it not apply at this point in time? It's really the mindset you have to have,
So let's move forward to Saved in America.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
So, old teammate of mine calls me out of the blue and he says, hey, Tosh, I'm working with this nonprofit and we're doing these things and we're rescuing girls and all this stuff and blah, blah. He tells me about it. He's like, are you interested in getting involved? And I was like, okay, well, I didn't really understand the scope of it at the time. I said, yeah. He said, well, we're having a meeting at my house at this location. So I go to the meeting. And I meet Joseph, and they explain what's going on. I'm like, oh wow, this is really going on. It just was all new news to me, but it's been going on for decades, probably centuries, actually, if you really think about it. But the problem, so essentially the problem is when we talk about human trafficking, right? We pretty much, at least in the United States, we're talking about girls that are coming from foreign countries brought into our country for the sex trade, right? Well, which is a horrible thing, but what's the important thing I don't think people understand is our daughters are getting pulled out of their homes, not physically pulled out of their homes, but being convinced to come away from their home. Then they get put in the sex trade business, and they get circulated around the United States. And then when they're used up in the United States, they send them south across the border and then never to be heard from again. That is a major epidemic in this country, and it's going on, and nobody talks about that aspect. They talk about what's going on in Thailand, the Philippines, and in Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe. But those are accepted things in those. It's part of their culture, Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, and you got these groups that go in and try to rescue, they'll rescue 30 girls from Cambodia, okay? And they'll pull them out of Cambodia and then they'll put them in Thailand in some home. Where do you think those girls end up?
Right back in Thailand.
Either Thailand or back to Cambodia. Same in Eastern Europe. Okay. Now, I will say, if you get one girl out of it, out of the 30 girls or the 100 girls that you rescue, you recover, and she changes her life, hey, you did an amazing thing.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that to me is a more difficult thing for me to understand, because it's an accepted part of culture. I mean, there are families that raise girls specifically for that reason in those countries, because it's an industry, right? But in the United States, it's absolutely unacceptable. How can we go to other countries and say, hey, you need to clean up your sex trade trafficking crap going on in your country? Well, we got something exactly the same thing going on in our country under the underbelly of the country, you know, and nobody seems to know about it or even gives a shit, you know. And everybody in the news is talking about, you know, the migrants that coming over being used, which is a horrible thing. And I'm not trying to diminish that.
But we're ignoring what's right in our backyard. Our own homegrown problem.
Yeah, let's square away ourselves first before we go out telling everybody else to fix their problem. Or, you know, we can still address that other problem. But how about the problem we have? That's why it's Saved in America, because we're recovering our daughters from our country right now is the goal, you know. And really, Save America is about recovering runaways. So we don't want to even get them. We don't want them to be in the sex trade. We're hoping to get them before that. Unfortunately, you only got 48 hours to recover a girl. In 48 hours, she's going to be, if she runs away from home, she's going to be contacted by somebody in the sex trade. 48 hours. In Las Vegas, it's 24. But more often than not, it's prior to them leaving the home, because whoever's grooming them is pulling them out of the house and already pushing them down that road.
And so how does your team operate in the sense that how do you get your cases? Or
so to no charge to any of the parents or organizations, if they need, so let's say a daughter runs away, all they got to do is go to the website, saveitadamerica.org, and go through the questionnaire process. Joseph will contact them immediately, and we'll start the case, and we'll start working it. Part of the process is our social media, for lack of better terms, more than that, but social media investigator. He has some algorithms and, you know, PFM that he's able to do searches throughout, you know, the dark web and everything, and he's amazing. He's able to, he has a questionnaire that he has the parents fill out, okay, about their daughter, getting all this data from them, as much as they can give, and then he goes to work on that. The parents will, first thing we make them do is file a police report, okay, so that's, it's on the books, and there's a case working, and work with law enforcement. And then we have them fill out a limited power of attorney, so that Saved in America can interact with law enforcement on their behalf for the child. Once they fill out all that information, no charge, we'll get on it. And then our social media investigator, I'll just call him Frank for now. He goes to work. That's where a lot of the magic happens. You know, Joe does a little bit of, PI with the databases that he has. He tries to work that piece. Our social media guy does the deep dive. He gets the information. So if he can locate, if Joe and him can locate the girl, what they'll try to do is they'll activate family members. If it's a simple issue, get the family members to recover the child, or friends to help recover that child, or law enforcement to recover the child. So we try to work at that level first. If we've got nobody that can recover the girl from wherever they're at, what'll happen is then Frank comes to me and he says, hey, look, here's the case. This is what we got. I got some leads. You know, there's a couple aspects. If there's leads, he'll have one of our guys go out and check out those leads, bring back that information, photos, all that stuff. And then he builds the case. But if we can't find anybody to help recover the girl, then what they do is they call me, say, hey, get a team together. We need 4 guys to go do surveillance on this particular location. And then we set up surveillance, and then we try to get PID, positive identification, on the girl. Once we do that, what we do is we call law enforcement to come in and grab the girl. But we'll spend 3-4 days on surveillance, checking out areas, you know, and, you know, the stuff that I can't get into the tech side of it because I really don't understand everything he's doing. But when he knows somebody's at a location, we'll stay on it until we get that positive ID. Once we get that positive ID, we call in law enforcement. Hey, we've got this girl, blah, blah, blah. And then they come and recover in the perfect world, barring, are there legal issues roadblocks that we have to deal with?
So in essence, you guys are augmenting law enforcement as far as being able to be boots on the ground, eyes on the ground, and research.
We're that gap that, look, man, there are so many girls that go missing every year. The police department is they're not just, missing persons is like the lowest priority on their list of things they got to deal with on a daily basis. And no fault of their own. It's just, policing it's a horrible, tough job, right? So there's so much going on. So what we're trying to do is fill that gap, especially for those parents that are desperate and, your daughter's got to be missing for 24 hours before we can do anything, and it's not because the cops or law enforcement doesn't want to help. It's just their hands are tied, man, because the policies and everything that they got to deal with and their work level and all that other stuff. Are you going to worry about a missing, 12-year-old girl, or are you going to deal with, the domestic violence that's happening, over here? The 30 cases of domestic violence in one night or whatever it is, what are you going to deal with? Domestic violence is one of the most dangerous things that a police officer has to deal with, right?
Well, and one of the underlying aspect of it is, so one clarification from law enforcement, the child doesn't have to be missing for 24 hours. They have to, if a parent reports their child missing, law enforcement takes a report. But where the bigger issue comes into is jurisdictional. Because if the child leaves San Diego, but they're going to go hang out with their friends in Huntington Beach, San Diego PD doesn't have the resources to send a team up and start scouring Huntington Beach.
Right.
It's a jurisdictional thing. It is one of the biggest impediments to doing it.
Right.
On top of, yes, that missing persons case is one of 1,000 cases that came in on that day.
Right. On that day.
That day.
So we're hoping to fill that gap and help out any way we can.
You mentioned girls. So have all of your cases been girls, or have you had any?
So every case that I've ever worked and I've ever seen have been girls. I think Saved in America has helped, and don't quote me on this. I'm not sure because I don't know every case.
Right.
I think they have helped recover a couple boys. But the girls are the prime victim, in this. Now, I don't know if there's a CD, because there's children. The thing I find weird is the number of children that go missing that we never hear from ever again in this country. The numbers are staggering. It's like, what do you mean they just disappeared? They're finding no traces of these kids,
And ultimately, Saved in America only knows of those kids that the parents have contacted your company or the organization to help them.
Yes. Well, Joe, because people don't know we're out there, or they're afraid to use us for whatever reason, because there's been scammer organizations out there that have that don't do what they say they're doing, and we are. I've firsthand experience with it. I've seen it. I've got my team members have seen it, and we're doing it, right?
And your team is former military and law enforcement, correct?
Yes. So getting former cops to do it's kind of difficult, so our numbers are real low on that. Almost my whole team right now is all former special operations guys. And they have to go through kind of a pipeline of getting them geared up to do this too. We've made the mistake in the past not really training somebody up, even though they have experience in spec warrior. And the biggest thing is the legal side of things. Hey, look, this ain't the same as being downtown Baghdad.
Right.
This is a different animal. And when I look at guys, that understand something that if they don't understand the find, fix, finish piece from their military days, if they don't truly understand that process, then they're not going to be effective as a team member, in my opinion. So, do you know what find, fix, finish means? It's a military
I mean, I think I get the gist of it.
Right. The finish piece is the kinetic, kicking doors, all that. Well, Save America doesn't do that. And we've never had to do that. And the only reason we would do that is if we saw the girl in harm being abused in front of our eyes, then we would do the finish piece if necessary. But it's still not the finish piece because the law side of it has to happen, right? So our focus is to find fix and, find the information and then locate. That's what the fix piece is to locate, actually identify where that person is. And then, and if we can assist law enforcement, if they want our help, we're going to help them as much as we can, And there's never any cost to the families. No cost to the family whatsoever. Your assistance. Every one of our guys are volunteers. I think Saved in America has like 2 or 3 paid employees, and they don't make very much money because we just don't have a whole lot of money. But they put a lot of time and energy into it. But yeah, everybody's a volunteer. Are you looking for more volunteers? Are you always looking for volunteers? So one of the things that Joe has set up with Saved in America, so we have our San Diego team, which is, all former special operations and law enforcement guys. But he's created this, what he calls a QRF and reserve. So you can volunteer if you're already a private investigator. Well, you can volunteer even if you're not, but you're going to be used in a different way. But as far as like what the surveillance our team does, the equivalent would be like, so let's say a girl goes missing in Ohio. Okay. If we have a QRF or a reserve, I'm not quite sure how it works because I'm not on that side of it, but it's a volunteer private investigator in a location that is just basically volunteered to help, and he doesn't have to be special operations or police. He's just got to be a private investigator that works in that area. Now, if he's those other things, those help, and we prefer that. But if they want to volunteer their license, in that area, then we can call if our social media guy, okay, in Ohio, who do we have in Ohio? He can go through the list and go, oh, we got this private investigator right here that has volunteered. We'll call him up and he'll do the fix piece. He'll go and do the surveillance. He'll go check the leads. And if he can get it done by calling law enforcement, he gets PID, he can call law enforcement, all that other stuff. And if he can get that done, then yeah. So we're trying to build a network of guys across the country, depending on how big the state is, right? Having multiple investigators that can volunteer their time to do that. We're always looking for that. Now, hey man, you may never get a call because it's all dependent on parents getting a hold of us. Right. Joe has shifted gears a little bit. We go off of the, when things are super slow, he goes off of the NAMIC list. NECMEC. NAMIC is the other organization. Yeah, NECMEC list. And he'll look at cases in the San Diego area, Southern California area, and he'll push those to our social media guy, and he'll work those up, even though we don't have a parent. And if we find a girl that we feel that we can recover, we'll try to find a way to get to the parents to talk to them and see if we can help, because people just aren't calling us to help like they could be. And that's where we're at right now. What's the website? It's savedinamerica.org. So, and that would be the contact point if somebody's listening and needs to use your service. Yes. But also if they want to, can they report missing children through that? I believe so, yes. The website is pretty awesome. It also gives a history. It shows the actual problem, gives all the statistics and the numbers. If you're a numbers person, it shows you the problem that we have. It covers down. It shows past cases that we've done minus certain details. Because when we work for a parent, we have that client, we treat them as if they were they are a client of ours. And so all those protections and all that still stay in place. And you can see some of the cases that were filmed that we worked, and there's a ton of stuff. There's a bunch of testimonials from parents and kids that have been recovered by our organization. So just check it out. SavingAmerica.org. You'll get all the information that you need. There's a volunteer section. There's all kinds of different information on that. You know, the article by Dr. Amy Carpenter. So her study showed that in every public school, junior high, and high school in the San Diego area, there is a sex trafficking recruiter, at least one.
Just in the San Diego area. So that's probably every other school and school district. And
yeah, that's not talking about private schools. So there's probably stuff like that going on in private schools. And, you know, the bigger cities, it's probably 2 or 3 of those guys in each school.
I hate to have to ask this question. Have you guys had repeat
offenders?
Custers or offenders, whatever you...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And where I'm going down that avenue, is there any issue for the parents to call again if they need...
No.
Okay.
We'll keep working a case. We don't care if we have to recover somebody 15 times.
Okay.
But the age runs out, right?
Yes.
So, if your girl's 17 and, it's getting close to that time, you're only going to get somebody out, because when she turns 18, she can do whatever the hell she wants, right?
Right.
So, so that we're, it's the minors that we're worried about, and it's the easiest way to do it, because recovering adults is a whole nother issue that,
yeah,
with complications that are involved, right?
Well, you hit the nail on the head before. They're adults. They can make their own decisions. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they may not be living the greatest life, and their family may be concerned about them, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can force an adult to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to talk about the process in which what happens to these girls. So you have, very rarely is it your little girl's walking down the street and somebody grabs her and throws her in a van and drives away. Okay, I don't even think that's even 1% of the problem, right? The problem is the girl starts having problems at home, or she may not have problems at home, but thinks she's having problems at home, and she's befriended by somebody, whether it's at her school or at some club or whatever, and that person starts grooming them. Okay. And what they do is they start convincing the child that he cares or she cares, because there's both men and women that do this. Well, boys and girls that do this to other boys and girls. They convince the girl that they care more about them than their parents care about them, and starts creating this rift between the parents if there wasn't already one there, right? And they start grooming the girl by, maybe giving her a little bit of cash, maybe, getting her new clothes or her hair done, her nails done, teaching her how to do, makeup. And then they start introducing narcotics and drugs. It starts out with marijuana, at first, whatever, and then it starts escalating, and then they get them hooked on heroin, and then they start pushing them out, turning tricks. And once they get hooked on the hard stuff, they got to have it, right? And it doesn't take long to do that. I know that from rehab, right? They had me on all kinds. They had me on methadone, which really doesn't affect it does affect your mind, but it's not like psychedelic or anything like that. It just, you become addicted to methadone, which I don't recommend for anybody. And it was super addictive. So, and I was only on it for a short period of time. Once somebody's getting jacked up on heroin, I don't know how fentanyl plays in this thing.
Right.
But the increase of death is now much higher because of that. And once they do that, then these girls are now a compliant participant in the process, because now they got to have their fix. Got to keep it coming, and it's a brutal process.
Unfortunately, the story repeats itself in a lot of different ways. Same way with the gang life. You know, a lot of these young kids that get involved in gangs, they went looking for something that wasn't at home. Sense of family, sense of belonging, sense of acceptance, whatever it is. It's the same way. These groomers operate the same way. They see what that child is, at least what the child portrays that they're missing, and they give that to them.
Well, yeah, and that grooming process is part of the sex traffic, because it's the same people who are selling drugs are the same people that are selling the girls. It's a reusable commodity, whereas, you know, if you buy, you know, a baggie of heroin, you know, that's a one-shot deal. You sold it, it's done. You know, you got to go get more to sell, whereas I can reuse this girl over and over and over again.
And like you said, even when they're, per se, used to their extent here in the United States, they're still then shipped off even somewhere else.
Yeah, they get sent south of the border. I know of 2 recoveries that we've done from Mexico, which was pretty awesome, actually. Our technical guy, I don't know how he did it, but he found a girl in Rosarito, and that was a combined thing. We had our volunteer guy that was in Mexico. We gave him some information. He went down. He was a former police officer that had to deal with the border. I can't give too many details about him.
No, I understand.
But he had all kinds of sources, contacts down there, and they were able to buy the information, be able to locate her. So at that point, it included Sparks PD up in Nevada. They were working in conjunction with us, and they coordinated getting the FBI involved and the federales. I think it was the federales. I'm not sure what the authority was down there. I think it was the federales. And they were able to recover the girl and recover the dude who brought her across the border, and now he's doing time, which is not our goal. But if it is a byproduct, we're damn happy about it.
Yes.
Right. The main goal is, that's the other thing is that I want everybody to understand. Our goal is not to catch bad guys. It's not even to stop bad guys. It's to recover the girl. And that's it. Now, if there's byproduct by getting bad guys and doing that, hey, that's great. That makes it even better.
At the end of the day, get the child removed, that given child removed from that environment. The extra is the icing on the cake.
Yeah. And be honest with you, what we do as far as like recover the girl, that's such a small, it's an important piece, but it's such a small piece for that girl, because now we got to talk about the recovery aspect, her recovery side of it, you know, getting her off of the addiction that she has, if she has that, her Stockholm syndrome, if she's got that, which a lot. So a lot of the girls that we've recovered, they still think that person cares more about them than anybody else, you know, which is unfortunate, but which, you know, California has some issues, right? So it's a non-lockdown state. So you can't take these girls and put them in a facility and keep them there and force them to get better, you know, so to speak. They can leave whenever they want. And so what we try to do after the recovery, it's unfortunate because some parents just can't afford it. So what we try to do is link them up with facilities that are outside of the state. So like Nevada's a lockdown state. There's a facility in Wyoming. There's not a whole lot of these facilities that need to exist, but we have to try to get them out of the state in order for them to get true rehabilitation. And that, you know, California has some crazy laws when that's concerned.
Well, that was the basis for my earlier question about the repeat, you know.
Oh, yeah. In California, you know, I've worked. So we had a case for a while. We were working for a facility here in San Diego. We weren't working for them. They asked Saving America, hey, can you help us with our problem? And it's a great facility. I don't know if I should mention the name of the facility, but they take care of these girls that have, you know, horrible backgrounds, you know, horrible stories. Their backstories, you know, when we first started doing it was we were setting up surveillance and reporting to the facility what was going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So what was going on at this facility? And the facility was doing great. They do great work, right? But the girls, they're not stupid. They know how to work the system, right? They have horrible backstories. You know, one of the cases, well, several of the cases, but one of the ones that stands out in my mind, a girl had been raped since the age of 5. And, she comes from a broken home and all this, and they're all wards of the state, right? And so the girls they're being handled by somebody, right? And so they're at the facility, they're being taken care of during the week. Come Friday night, they leave the facility, they go turn tricks, or they go do whatever they're going to do. And then come Sunday night, they come back, and then the facility takes care of them. So it's a great thing for a pimp.
Right.
Right. And so this process is just going on and on. And these are troubled girls, man. When I first started working this thing, I was like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? Because these girls don't want help. That was my attitude at first. And it was frustrating because we'd see these girls and we'd be reporting what's going on. We didn't touch them or anything like that. We just helped the facility gather the information and watch them. And if we see them do anything illegal, then we'd call the facility, they'd call the police or the sheriff, and they'd come and deal with the situation. But these girls we found they're like really good operatives. If you could channel their criminal aspect and then put them into the CIA, they'd be amazing, right? So we would, the tricks that I went to school to learn how to do, even though I kind of knew some of the stuff, you got to have a little bit of a criminal mind to be in that type of work. But we would find dead drops of cell phones out in this field next to the facility in these really obscure locations in the field. Like very few markers they just, they'd have their steps to know where they were supposed to be and where to find, and we would find everything from phones to, condoms and birth control pills, marijuana, other drugs, and they had these dead drops all over the place that they would just drop off, and the facility can't stop the girls from leaving.
Right. The
girls just leave. And so, our job was to tail them and watch them, see where they're going. And, we don't know why they're leaving. They're leaving. Are they getting picked up by somebody? And we actually facilitated the stopping of that by just being there. People knowing, cars would pull up to a spot where these girls were hanging out, and then, sometimes the girls would get in, but us being there, we'd turn our lights on, shining it on them, then the car, takes off.
Right.
So it was probably a customer, but sometimes the girls would get in a car, even though they knew we were there, and they'd just ziggy on out. So we'd get the license plate and the make of the car and then report that. It's all we can do, right? And then we try to, in the beginning, we were trying to deter the girls from leaving by just being there. But that didn't work out so well. So, and the girls were starting to interact with us. So we would, our hands is, hey, don't interact with the girls. And in the beginning, like I said, I was frustrated about it because, I don't know if they thought we were some kind of law enforcement agency or whatever, but they would throw rocks at our cars, call us all kinds of vicious names, do weird stuff in front of us. And so, the operation evolved. We're like, okay, let's get farther back, right, observe, so these girls don't interfere with us. And I mean, at first I was like, man, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And then Joe had us link up with the facility, and then we started having meetings with them, and they started giving us case files on these girls. And then when I started reading the backstories on these girls, I just, no wonder they were little assholes, right? I mean,
their whole life had been messed up from day one.
Yeah, these girls were abused, and I was like, God dang it. So, after that, I had a different mindset on the facilities. And a lot of guys never never got to that point where they got to understand what was going on at that facility. But that went on for, I think, 2 years. We did that. And then, again, repeat offenders every time, but we helped recover a lot of those girls, so.
You said you're trying to build a network of affiliate volunteers throughout the country. Are you also trying to grow Saved in America across the country?
That would be great, but it's so difficult, and we don't have a lot of money. So,
you're all donation funded.
We're all donation funded, right? Jill wants Saved in America, I think, to become nationwide, right? Like an organization. But, me personally, I don't care if somebody else starts up something like Saved in America in their county, their state, their city, whatever. Just if the word's getting out and, we have essentially splinter cells of people doing that, the
mission's still being accomplished.
The mission's being accomplished. But the problem is the legal side of things and how do you handle it, all that.
Right.
Joe's very good at covering down on, hey, we got to look at this. You can't do this. You can't do that. Blah, blah. There's a lot of you can't do's, right? In fact, when I first started looking at how he was running his operation, I was pretty impressed from an operational standpoint, the power of attorney. That's huge, right? And then the process in which the guys came on that were part of the team, they had to get their PI license, they had to get their guard card, and they had to get their exposed carry card. And then once you got that, make sure you guys get their CCW, okay? And the process, and then guys have to keep up on that, on those certifications. And there's, you have to, for the BSIS exposed carry, you have to qualify 4 times in 2 years, requalify 4 times in 2 years, so that there's a process to that. If a guy isn't willing to maintain that, then he shouldn't be on the team.
Right.
So that, and then we have monthly meetings, and he does a little bit of training with the guys to understand more of the legal aspects and what's going on with the organization, all that other stuff. And so there's due diligence going on with the guys, and really what he's doing, he's also protecting the guys, the fine fix aspect of it. Like, hey, no, we're not going hands on. That's for law enforcement to do, because you start getting into a weird area when you start doing that. So our goal is not to go hands on if at all possible, and, I've been with it since 2014. I've never had to go hands on a recovery,
And for the most part, have you found, well, I'm assuming there's probably a large number of the kids who don't want to go back home, but when you read these backstories of abuse and everything, you're still...
That was a foster home, right? So that's the extreme case,
okay.
Right?
But what I'm getting at is if you kind of get a vibe, but I guess I'm answering my own question because of the fact that you get law enforcement involved in the recovery. If there's an aspect of not returning a child home to an unsafe home, law enforcement will handle that. Ultimately, your organization is just trying to get the parent at least connected to where their child's at.
Yes. At least, let's say we go out and we can't actually PID the girl. We have just created an incredible intelligence package for law enforcement. Whether they use it or not, it's on them at that point. But we do hand that information over to law enforcement. Whether they take it or not, I'm not on that side of the operation. Mine is really just the physical surveillance piece, or going and checking leads. That kind of, I'm kind of a foot soldier for, if you will. That's probably a bad term, but I'm the hands-on guy.
Got it.
For the organization. How they work that piece, I don't know. It's just I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Well, I was just talking about connecting parents, but when you're dealing with a child who potentially either they don't want to go back home, or that you don't want them, and when I say you, the the best thing for them may not necessarily be to go back to where they came from.
It's funny you say that, because when I first came on Saved in America and I was doing these recoveries, I thought about that hard. I'm like, hey, the girl ran away for a reason. Okay. Whether it's a good reason or not, I don't know. And that did bother me at first, because we may be putting her in just as bad, if not a worse situation by bringing her back to her parents. But if you look at the fact that the parents volunteered or came to us to search out their child, shows some level of giving a damn about their kid.
Right.
So those are the cases that I like working. Like, I'm not a big fan of the neck search, because we're starting from ground zero and we don't even know if the parent cares, but we got to do something, right? We got to do things that have to, that at least hits the problem a little bit, you know? And the big thing is, I want parents to know we're out there and we're a resource and that we're going to do it, and you're not going to pay a dime for it. Now, you may have to pay a dime to a facility for recovery, and we'll guide you and help you in that process as Saved in America. But, you know, it's kids. It's your kids. What are you willing to sacrifice? So,
right. So bringing this to an end, the podcast is about the transition out of the military, out of law enforcement, first responders. Any last bit of advice that you can give to somebody who's about to transition or planning their transition?
You want to talk about contract work, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so retirement makes it a lot easier, right? So if you retire out of the military, doing contract work, local contract work, like training type contract, that's what I do. Like I worked for MARSOC as a training cell instructor for a couple of years. And I worked Navy EOD as a firearms instructor for them for a couple of years. And then I worked a contract. I actually went overseas for this. I worked for recon in Okinawa for a few months. It's intermittent. It usually pays well and they take care of you. But it's cutthroat too. It's not stable. Whenever you contract, even let's say I'm going to be working a contract here soon for NSW. It's short term usually. You know, the longest contract I worked was 2 years. But you know, when you work contract, you're always 30 days out from not having a job. It's just the way the contracts are written.
And I would imagine you're never at a point where you can actually bank on the next contract.
No, you know, because the contract process of, you know, the contract companies have to bid on the contract, and, you know, there's so many variables involved with that. And, you know, and the other thing that these contract companies will do, they'll use your resume to win a contract, but then they won't hire you. So that happens quite a bit. It's happened to quite a bit of my friends. It hasn't happened to me yet, but I'm sure it will.
So if somebody's thinking about going down the contracting route, definitely go in with both eyes wide open as to the limitations on the consistency of work and the fact that a given contracting firm may be just using you for your resume.
Right. And your mentality has to change too. Okay. So let's say you worked at the training command for whatever training command it is, and you were the lead enlisted guy in that department. Let's say it's tactics. Okay. You're the lead tactics. And so your passion of driving that thing and making it better and evolve better, is what is required of you while you're active duty. When you come in as a contractor, you can't have that same passion, because you'll get let go. You've got, in most cases, not all of them, but in most cases, you're there to do a job the way they want the job done. So your mentality, you can't go over what is expected of you, because one, you could screw up the contract for doing that. And two, the military doesn't give a damn about you as a contractor. I don't care if you're super Silver Star, Medal of Honor, awardee type kind of guy. As a contractor, the military doesn't care about you. You're filling a spot. And so it's not about exceeding expectations or being below. You got to hit the spot. There's no other way to be. You have to be right on the spot. Otherwise, contracting is weird too, depending on what you've done in the military. So I'm a retired guy, right? And this is what I noticed on some of the contracts that I've worked. As a retired guy coming in, there's two things that go on. One, you're an old head, right? And two, you're a threat to the contract worker that did 6 years in the unit, right? So your experience base is massively greater than the guy who did, let's say, a guy who did 2 platoons in the SEAL team, and you're a guy who's done 8, 9 platoons in the SEAL team, and your base of knowledge. But you come in on the contract, and that guy's the lead of the contract. A lot of those guys, we're brothers, right? That brotherhood is gone once you start working contracts, because now you're a threat to his position. I'll tell you, most retired guys don't want that lead position unless they're money.
Just let me be a worker bee.
Just happy to be a worker bee. Anybody that's had true leadership, like I was a platoon chief for 2 platoons, and I never want that position again. It was great at the time, but I don't want to be in charge of that. I just want to be a shooter. I just want to be one of the guys, right? But those younger guys that had done part of it, and I'm not trying to discredit their time in and their service. That's an amazing thing. But the guys that didn't put a full career in, they have a tendency to, and it's not everybody, but this is what I've noticed working these contracts. And then depending on what you did in the military. So like if you're working for a Ranger and you're a SEAL, or you're an SF guy and you're working for a SEAL, there's a little bit of animosity between the two, and it's bizarre because I don't care. Like I don't buy into SEAL, SF, any of that. I mean, all those guys that went over and did their thing, especially even infantry guys, right? I mean, those guys I hold up in a higher status than the spec war guys because we were pampered. Right. We had harder training, we had better equipment, blah, blah, blah. We got pampered, man. We had internet everywhere we go, and everything was always taken care of. For the infantry guy that is crapping in a bucket, living in a tent, just sucking it with crappy equipment, and people always yelling at them, and all the regular military crap they got to deal with. Guys that have dealt with that, to me, are the real heroes. The spec war guys, hey man, we pay the price in the beginning and the training and all that, and we work hard. But we get the best equipment. We get everything's given to us,
right?
Even though we earn it, it's the E4 infantry machine gunner guy is sucking it, and he's making it work. You know what I mean? So that to me is very impressive. So, but when you get a group of alpha males, the egos kick in. The egos kick in, and then the threat of authority and money, power and money, get in the way, and the brotherhood is out the door. It's gone. So contracting is very political, and it's not consistent unless you land that perfect contract. It's ugly business. So I don't recommend unless you are retired, to be honest with you, because if your life is hanging on a job where the job can be gone in 30 days, unless you got some kind of backup behind you with a pension, retired pension, unless you like living that way. And if you're like, hey, I get that.
Living on that edge.
Hey, no, I understand. Yeah. Hey man, that's cool. You're a young guy and you just like new things all the time. Hey man, go for it. But It's not stable. The pay is okay, but when you factor in taxes and everything else, it ends up being like a regular job that's there sometimes and then sometimes isn't. And, you know, so I don't, I'm talking locally, like within inside the United States. Now, the other contracts that are high risk and all that other stuff, I don't know anything about that. I've never done those. But my friends that do that, man, they make a killing doing it, but their life is miserable in the long run. You know, as far as, unless they're a young guy who's just getting after it and enjoying that, you know, got a second home in Thailand, you know, to avoid taxes and all that. You know, if they're doing that and they're living that and they love that, but, you know, it's one of those things that's just not stable, right?
What's the trade-off to get it? It was a more rhetorical question. Like, what are you giving up to get that? So you're giving up security. You're giving up the sense of a guaranteed job for that roll in the dice of, hey, I may be here tomorrow, I may be there tomorrow.
Yeah. And shoot, if I were 26 again, I would be all about that lifestyle, right? You know, and I didn't have kids. If you've got family or anything, any kind of connection here, then it's hard on the family. That's the other thing you got to consider when you decide what path you're going to go, right? If you take these contract jobs and you've got family, look, the SEAL teams, I think, has like a 85-90% divorce rate. I don't know what it is in the SF. I'm sure it's similar. It's horrible. It's horrible for the people that are around you.
It's a machine that eats up families.
Yeah. Well, and it eats up the operator too. You know, gives them a false sense of how important they are, and then when it's all said and done, you don't matter anymore. You know, you're a spent casing. You're not doing anything for anybody.
You mentioned previously that you don't foster a social media presence, but how can people get a hold of you if they've got more deeper questions for you on it?
Shoot, man, I haven't even, actually they can go to, strategicopstraining.com. That's my training company. That's where I do all the self-defense, training, and I also do some licensing out of that company. If they need to get a hold of me, they can get a hold of me through that website. So strategicopstraining.com.
And I'll put that in the show notes.
And that's if they want training of any kind. And then if they want private investigation or security work, so the same guys that are doing Saved in America, I use them on a for-profit business to do private security. You know, the more high-risk type stuff, not, you know, standing in front of a construction in a uniform or anything like that. But if they need executive protection, we're not a pretty crew. We're not the, you know, high-profile. If you're looking for the pretty guys, we're not that. We got some pretty guys, but most of our guys they're operators. So it's more about the high-risk type executive protection than, you know, the entourage. You know what I mean?
I appreciate your time, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.